Welcome back to Business 150, Introduction to Management. This is now our 5th video in module number 1. And as you can see from this title slide, we're looking in this video at types of managers, ways that we can understand different types of managers. And as you'll see in the next couple slides, we're looking at managers by functional area as well as level in the organization. Now, here's the thing. In this particular video, there's a couple different ways we can understand the phrase different kinds of managers. One of the easiest ways, of course, is to understand good managers versus bad managers. And I want to here just describe for you a very true principle in business that you should take with you. Here's the principle. People don't leave bad jobs. People leave bad bosses. Let me repeat that. People don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. Think about that for a moment. You may have had the kind of job that was just okay. It paid your bills, but you weren't really excited about it. But quite frankly, you liked your boss understood you, was kind to you, helped you out when you needed, to adjust your hours and those kinds of things. Quite frankly, in a job like that, even though you're not really excited about the job itself, you'll probably find a reason to stay. Now contrast that, some of you may also have had the kind of job where you enjoyed the job, you thought it was going to be great for you, but you just don't get along with your boss. Your boss makes your life miserable. Maybe he or she is always micromanaging you or checking up on you or getting angry at you for no reason, or for some reason you just don't like your boss. Well, guess what? If you haven't already, chances are, even though you enjoy that job, you'll find a way to get another job because your life is just too miserable working for that boss. Have you found that to be true? I found that to be true in my life, quite frankly. I think that's a very true saying. Now, that's not exactly what we're talking about in this video, but it's a principle you should know and that we'll talk about throughout this semester in this class on management. People don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. Now, let's move onward into the actual content of this video. Because after this video, you should be able to distinguish between different kinds of managers as well as recognize different areas of management within typical organizations. So the first thing I want to show you is this diagram in this pyramid. This diagram in this pyramid distinguishes managers along two different ways, and you can see here by level and by functional area. So if you look at the pyramid from the top down and the vertical, you can see at the very top of the pyramid, they're top managers, and then below them, middle managers, and then underlying them, first line managers. And that's one way to understand different types of managers, by their level. But another way to understand managers is by the functional area that they oversee and manage. You see some examples there. Marketing, finance, operations, human resources, administration, etc. Right? Now, when we talk about managers by level within the firm, when we say top managers, we're talking about the very small group of executives who manage the overall organization. And those are typically the types of managers, the type of executives that have titles that begin with the letter C, like Chief Executive Officer or CEO, or Chief Financial Officer or CFO. In fact, we call those folks the C-suite. In other words, the small suite where all of the executives' titles begin with the letter C. They create the organization's goals, the overall strategy, their large operating policies, right? They set the tone for the entire organization. Now below them, reporting to them, is a group of other managers known as middle managers. You can see there they're primarily responsible for implementing the policies and plans that those top executives put into place. Now, many times those middle managers may have titles like vice president or assistant vice president or regional director and these kinds of titles, right? And they also supervise and coordinate managers below them. And those are what we call frontline or first line managers, those managers who supervise and coordinate the activities of operating employees. Now, this is something that you may already know and be familiar with from your own personal anecdotal experience. Some of you may have worked in a retail store or a fast food restaurant, or someplace where you reported to a shift boss or a store manager, and that was your boss. That's a frontline or a first line manager. And of course, they had a boss as well. And so maybe perhaps every other month, the regional manager would come by and your boss would say, hey, by Tuesday, everything's got to be sparkling clean because my boss is coming in. And Tuesday morning rolled around and your boss was all nervous, right? And your regional came in to check up on the store, right? Well, that's an example of different managers by different levels within the organization. I think that makes sense. I think that from your own experience, you may already have some anecdotal association or familiarity with these different levels of managers. But that's not the only way to understand different types of managers. As this next slide illustrates, different managers are responsible over different functional areas within an organization. You see some examples there. So let's talk about this in more detail. In a large organization, you may have managers who are only responsible for marketing. And you can see marketing described there as selling the product and work in new product development, promotion, distribution. And that specialty is different than financial managers who undertake the accounting, cash management, capital investments for the company, which in turn is different than the folks who run operations. Folks who control production, inventory, quality, plant layout. And so you can see there, managers who run different functional areas within the organization, like human resource managers, who do different things than the folks on the first slide, hiring and developing employees, as well as administrative managers who are familiar with all areas of management and really taking care of multiple areas within the group, and then other folks as well, folks in charge of R&D or public relations, right? And so essentially what we're saying is that there are many different ways to distinguish managers and pick out different kinds of managers. And as we've mentioned, one way is to distinguish between level and functional area. And even that gives you sort of an insight into how organizations are run as you recognize different areas of management within the organization. What does this all mean? It means that when we talk about managing an organization, it can be a very, very broad description, and one manager's daily work life may look significantly different than another manager's daily work life. Imagine if there's a frontline manager running a marketing department, well, her life is going to look entirely different than the executive who is the chief executive officer of the entire public corporation. Their life is going to look a lot different than the person who is in charge of the entire accounting department, typically known as the controller of a public corporation. There's lots of different ways to distinguish and to differentiate between different levels of management. Each one of the people I've described manages. Their life looks distinctly different based upon their level within the organization and the functional area that they oversee. I hope that provides a little bit of insight and makes things a little clearer for us as we consider this very large topic of management. We'll see you in the next lecture.